medieval king once spent the equivalent of a modern soldier's annual salary on a single robe. Today, a model walked to Paris runway in a garbage bag and people called it genius. So, what exactly happened to fashion? So, let's clear something up really quick. When you look at a portrait of a Henry VIII, all the gold, embroidery, the fur, the jewelry, that's not a guy who just enjoyed getting dressed in the morning. That's a guy sending a message. Because back then, clothing wasn't self-expression, it was more like a language. In medieval Europe, what you wore wasn't just your choice, it was literally tied to a social rank by law. These were called sumptuary laws, and they went into crazy detail about who could wear what, like purple, for example. That dye came from these teeny sea snails called murex, and it was insanely expensive to make, so only royalty could wear it. If some random merchant showed up wearing purple, that wasn't the fashion, that was illegal. Same with silk, velvet, ermine fur, gold thread. All of it meant something. People could look at you and instantly know where you stood in society. There was no social media, no photos, no IDs, so your appearance was your identity. If a king walked into a city, people needed to know immediately who he was. No confusion, no guessing. So the clothes weren't decoration, they were basically infrastructure, and the level of work that went into them was insane. A single good outfit could take months to make. Even something like Bayeux tapestry, which is technically embroidery and shows the normal conquest in crazy detail. Clothing back then wasn't disposable, you didn't throw it away, you posted it down like property. Same with armor. A knight's armor wasn't something you just bought off a shelf. A skilled metalsmith could spend up to a year making one side, custom fitted to a single person, and it had to move perfectly with the body in combat. So yeah, it protected you, but it also showed everything you were supposed to represent. Status, discipline, wealth, and power. Even colors had meaning. Red was power and danger, black was the charge or mourning, blue came from lapis lazuli imported from Afghanistan. So it became associated with purity and the Virgin Mary. So no, you couldn't just wear what you liked. Every single detail meant something, and everyone understood it. That's where fashion comes from. A world where clothing wasn't just what you wore, it was what you said without speaking. Then the machine showed up and everything changed. The Industrial Revolution did something no war or empire ever managed. It made clothing cheap. With inventions like the spinning jenny, the power loom, and the cotton gin, fabric that used to take weeks to make could now be produced in hours. Factories in places like Manchester were running non-stop. For the first time, regular people could actually afford multiple outfits. The middle class started dressing like the upper class, and those old sumptuary laws basically stopped mattering. By the 1800s, you could wear whatever you wanted. The rules were gone. But that created a new problem. If everyone can dress like a noble, how do nobles stand out? So fashion sped up. By the early 1900s, fashion authority moved to Paris. Designers like Charles Frederick Worth, Coco Chanel, and Christian Dior weren't just making clothes. They were creating new identities every season. And status wasn't about gold, it was about the label inside your jacket. Chanel especially changed the game. She stripped the fashion down. No more heavy corsets or excessive decoration. Her little black dress in 1926 flipped everything. Black used to mean mourning. She turned it into elegance. After World War II, things shifted again. People had lived through rationing, so excess felt wrong. Dior's new look brought back some glamour, but fashion couldn't fully return to what it was. It had already changed too much. And then the 1960s broke it completely. Youth culture took over. Miniskirts, jeans, band tees, clothing stopped being about class and started being about identity. It wasn't who are you in a society anymore, it was who do you want to be. Here's where people get confused about modern fashion. You see a runway look that looks ridiculous and think, who is this even for? It's not really for wearing, it's for attention. Runway shows today are closer to art than product. Brands like Balenciaga or Comme des Garçons use extreme pieces to create images that spread everywhere and keep them relevant, because the real money comes from simpler things. Sneakers, perfumes, accessories. You might not buy a $15,000 coat, but you might buy a $100 belt. And the crazy runway stuff is what makes them feel worth it. But it's not just marketing. Some designers actually treat fashion like art. Ray Kawakubo, Alexander MC Queen, Martin Margiela, they use clothing to explore ideas like identity, beauty, even the human body itself. They know how to make normal clothes. They just choose not to. The problem now is you can't always tell what's real and what's just made to go viral. A weird outfit might mean something, or it might just be content, and from a photo it looks the same. What's changed is the speed. What used to take years to influence every day, fashion now happens in months. That gap between runway and real life, it's basically gone. By the early 2000s, something changed. The average person was buying around 40 pieces of clothing a year. By 2014, that doubled, and by 2023, many people were buying 60, even 100 items a year, most of them barely worn. So what changed? It mostly comes down to Zara. Back in the 80s and 90s, fashion moved slowly 2 seasons a year, planned months ahead. Zara broke that. They cut production time from 6 months to about 2 weeks by controlling everything. Design, manufacturing, retail. Instead of a few collections, they would drop in new items every week, and people loved it. Stores felt new every visit. Everything felt limited, like if you didn't buy it now, it will be gone. Other brands followed: H&M, Forever 21, ASOS, Shine, pushing it even further. At the extreme, Shine uploads thousands of new items daily. Fashion stopped being seasonal, it became constant, and that speed has consequences. Originality drops, brands copy instead of create, and social media makes repeating outfits feel wrong. So people buy more and wear less, and the quality collapses. Cheap clothes are made to fall apart, which keeps the cycle going. The result? Around 90 million tons of textile waste every year and massive environmental impact from even basic items. This is what happens when fashion becomes fully accessible, not just more style, but way more consumption. So, is fashion getting worse or just different? Honestly, both. At the top, it's more creative than ever. Designers have new tools, new ideas, and global reach. But at the bottom, where most people shop, quality and longevity are mostly gone. Clothes aren't made to last, they're made to be replaced. And meaning that's changed too. Clothing used to clearly signal something. Now it's unclear. A logo could mean status or nothing at all. The language of fashion is kind of breaking down. We spent centuries making fashion accessible to everyone, and we succeeded. But now we are seeing the downside. More choice doesn't always mean more meaning. The old system was restrictive but clear. The new one is free but messy, and fashion still hasn't figured out how to balance the two.